As we begin the session today, we respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we meet today, right across the country, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome everybody. Great to have you to the webinar today hosted by Businessary and PageUp. I'm Annabelle Rees, I'm the Managing Director of Businessary, and what a different world we're in today that we're planning this webinar back in March when we're hoping to have an in-person breakfast, catch up and mingle. And now look at us, we're certainly in Melbourne in hard lockdown. If you're joining us from other states across Australia, we're very jealous, but hopefully we'll be there with you soon. So welcome, we're really excited about today. Last check we had over 200 registrations, so it's great to see everybody, albeit virtually and remotely. Seeing different people is still really exciting for those of us that are in lockdown, and we're looking forward to a really great event today. So get started. Who is Businessary? We're the little house that delivers big. Businessary specialises in HR, digital marketing and business advisory, and today we're thrilled to showcase our talent acquisition and EVP division. We're excited to host this event with PageUp and referencing their launch of their recruitment marketing technology into Australia, which of course one of our panellists, Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, have used to launch and amplify their EVP. So let's sort of talk to today's event and we can get started. Today you'll hear from Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, then we're going to have a 5-minute break around 10 AM, and then we're going to hear from Flybys, and we're going to finish off with a live Q&A. All attendees will be muted throughout today's presentation, but to make this as live and interactive as possible, please submit your questions via the question mark button, and we can collect and answer those during the live Q&A with our panellists at the end of the session. When submitting your questions, just like if it was an in-person event, please mention your name and your company, and then as well the question. We're recording this presentation and it will be available on our website later today, and you can share with your colleagues or play back at your own leisure. We will also be finishing and emailing through a survey to all attendees, and for those that respond, you'll go into a draw to win a Providor or Uber Eats voucher to the value of $50. So it's a little incentive, but hopefully we all love some feedback, so please let us know what you think of today's event, and that's all greatly appreciated. As the psychologist, I would be remiss to not mention that today is Are You OK Day? Particularly again, given light of the unusual pandemic circumstances that we've faced this year, the extended lockdown throughout Victoria and Melbourne. Are You OK Day is to inspire and empower everyone to have meaningful and connected conversations, and check in to see if anyone is struggling with life. Don't need to be an expert, just a good friend, and just asking the questions is really important. Are You OK Day has a 4-step approach. 1, ask, are you okay? 2, just to listen. 3, encourage action. And 4, keep checking in. So, time to get started. So to introduce our first panel, we have Chelsea Harris, who joins us from Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. Last September, she joined the bank as a newly formed recruitment leadership team. In the last 12 months, the bank's completely transformed their recruitment and onboarding strategy. And in addition to her day job, Chelsea's been instrumental in leading the EVP and employer brand program of work. Chelsea's based in Adelaide and is formerly lead talent acquisition for Flight Centre Group. Welcome, Chelsea. Joining us also is Fiona Morton. Hi, Chelsea. VP Recruitment Marketing and New Markets from PageUp. Fiona's been with PageUp for over 17 years and HR technology market for over 20. Fiona and her team have been working with the Bendigo and Adelaide Bank in successfully implementing the recruitment and marketing technology. Welcome, Fiona.
Morning.
And finally, Jason Burns heads up our talent acquisition employer branding division for Businessary. He's been working with the bank coming up to 2 years now, starting initially in leading the review of the recruitment function, sourcing the recruitment leadership team, and most recently working in partnership with Chelsea on building the EVP and the employer brand program. Jason's formerly head of talent acquisition with the REA Group and with Wesfarmers Insurance. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning, everyone.
So let's get started. Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, it's been quite a journey, and I wonder, might be great, Jason, for you to kick off and tell us what have been the drivers for the transforming the recruitment function?
Yeah, look, absolutely, and the whole thing started almost 2 years ago with the appointment of Bendigo Bank first appointing their first CPO, Chief People Officer, which was a great move for them and had been something that had been kind of overdue. And I had been in connection with her to come in and do initial review of recruitment. And I think what was so pleasing about that was the fact that whilst the whole of HR required some transformation, Lou felt very strongly that recruitment was to be the first cab off the rank. And those of us, amongst the audience and those of us on the panel know that that's sometimes not always the case internally. So that was kind of thrilling in itself. And really, she had kind of positioned that in that, and quite rightly so, that recruitment and talent acquisition is the gateway to the organisation and ultimately the face of the business. So it was really good. So that we did initial review, came in, did a discovery and diagnostic over a period of about 4 weeks, and really came back with a set of recommendations and a pulse check fundamentally of where the bank was at across those kind of core things that we all look at in talent acquisition, such as workforce planning, interview and assessment, hiring manager experience, recruiter experience, candidate experience, onboarding, and of course EVP and employer brand. And so that report was kind of taken away, allowed Lou to have a look at the suggested operating model that we gave, and we were really lucky to get involved in helping her select her new recruitment leadership team, Jake Pickard, and of course with Chelsea, and another 3 or 4 within that group as well. But what became quite apparent through that diagnostic was there was 2 kind of immediate things. Whilst there was a lot to do right across the whole piece of the recruitment and the entire transformation required, there were some obvious gaps, particularly in onboarding, which the team were immediately able to get on board with, I think, PageUp to kind of help improve that immediately. And then EVP and employer brand became quite evident that was an important thing to get to. And they had an amazing story to tell, which we'll get to, but it just wasn't being told.
Right. And of that sort of recommendations, maybe Jason or Chelsea, after onboarding had been tackled, what was it about EVP that made it the next go-to priority or so important on that list?
Yeah, I'm sure you can see from the things that Jason just mentioned there was an absolute laundry list of things to tackle. And I think when you are looking at that type of list, it is sometimes hard to go, okay, where do we start? Onboarding was absolutely one of those. There was strong recognition from many through people and culture and obviously through our business divisions as well, that work was required. We're a large organisation. It's not really a foreign concept. Of course, most of the bank is customer facing. They're exposed to a CBP, so they knew that EVP should sit in somewhere. So aside from there were some bigger pieces like the onboarding and then setting up the foundations of processes and teams. We knew that this needed to happen first because it was going to inform the creation of all the other pieces, from our recruitment marketing plans to those assets, just our general look and feel, our internal branding. We knew it didn't need to be perfect, and we knew that we didn't need to just finish that whole entire project before we could move on to the next thing, but we knew that it had to almost happen first.
Makes sense. And like you said, the bank's almost 160 years old. There's a really deep, proud history. How had the employee experience been communicated prior to the work that you've recently done?
Yeah, I'd say it was just generally quite haphazardly. There was absolutely that the wanting to have a great candidate experience, and those community values were really important to everybody that had touched it. But it was a lot of business divisions and teams saying different things. So it wasn't succinct and it wasn't consistent. And because of that, those messages just lost their potency. When you're saying hundreds of things to thousands of people, it just becomes white noise. Even when those things are all great things, there's no real clear message. And if you aren't clear about who you are and who you aren't, of course, it doesn't really have to cut through.
That makes sense.
Just to add to that, Annabelle, it's when we actually did the initial diagnostic and the review, we actually surveyed about, I think, 750 hiring managers within the bank. And one of the questions that we asked was, do you think EVP and employer brand is important? Well, absolutely. It was resounding yes, I think. But many people actually didn't really potentially understand actually what that was. And we saw that when we asked the question to define it. And I think that was allowed us to get on the agenda quite quickly, because there was a great sense of importance around it, but there was, I think, an education piece to go, well, what actually is it? It is more than just kind of telling you that you get 4 weeks holiday and you might get a discounted home loan, and which I think is not, it certainly isn't uncommon, I think, within the sphere that we operate in.
That makes sense. So how did you get started, Jason or Chelsea? Maybe can you talk to us about how you went from that being a priority and you've got the support internally to do the piece of work. What were the steps that you took to start to gather the data and work your way through the process?
Do you want me to start with that, JB?
Yeah, you go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think this is an important point as well for anybody looking to follow this similar work. It's about looking at the data which you already may have, or what research has already been conducted internally. We were fortunate to be able to leverage quite a few culture review surveys. We had an employee engagement survey that was concurrently run at the same time also. So it's not like always needing to start from scratch to develop the data. You already would have some sets in there somewhere. Then what we did was form some focus groups, and we made sure that we coordinated those focus groups across all different divisions. We are a large organisation with different brands, many different nuances across, even our metro location to our regional locations, that type of thing. So different divisions, different tenures. We had people who had been with the organisation for a month up to 20 years, and different levels of seniority as well, because there's the recognition that, of course, those opinions are going to vary along that employee life cycle, which we knew from things like our employee engagement survey. We also asked for nominations from business leaders and our HR business partners, because we wanted to make sure that, of course, we were including people who were like the people that we wanted to attract, and that was going to be an important part of it.
Jason, anything to add to that?
Yeah, look, Chelsea's kind of succinctly pulled that together. You can see that on our slide as well. So it's a process of discovery. There's a lot of legwork required in it, and I think I had learned from previous organisations, having been ahead of talent, and of course I'm going to say this, but the value of having the external lens to that data as well. It was one of the most powerful things I did in a previous organisation, to bring someone in to help me with that. And I think what it does is it actually allows somebody without the emotional context or the rationale necessarily to kind of justify sometimes the things that come out that you maybe don't want to hear, but are true, and you get the permission to actually discuss that without the kind of repercussion of having been part of the organisation. So the legwork is important, and I think what we learn is that old adage, you kind of measure twice and you cut once, and it takes quite a bit of time, but Chelsea kind of had that quite succinctly there.
Great. And Chelsea, were there any surprises that came out of the data?
For us, I don't think there were many surprises. I think a lot of it was absolutely, I think, aspirational as we were going on this journey around going on a transformation journey. So some of it was, I think, who we wanted to become, but also an acknowledgement of who we are not yet. But that is equally important, because we need to be able to speak to that through our recruitment process. So we calibrated that information. So the pillars that we came down to, we went through a process of making sure through the data that we had available, through regular meetings and catch-ups with our people involved in the business, that, okay, this is what we're hearing. Is this also what you anecdotally hear as well? So that was important to us to just have some more proof points as we went along. I think we knew that this would happen, but we had decided to go with a group EVP as opposed to individual brand EVPs, and I think that's a decision that a lot of companies need to decide on, because you could do it either way. We had made the decision to go with a group EVP, but there were variances through that across our, for example, our branch or customer-facing employee experience, and what they thought of our brand versus the value propositions that somebody who works in a more corporate head office style role might experience. For example, the community theme came through really strongly with our customer-facing branch roles or our community bank employees, as opposed to with our corporate-facing employees. It really came through around that, the culture and our flexibility and our willing to be able to accept all different types of arrangements to make that culture work for us. So there were slight variations, and that then was another challenge of, okay, well, how do we weave that into the strategic to amplify different parts?
That makes sense, and we've got a slide up that in essence summarises the piece of work on a page. Jason, do you want to perhaps talk through how did you get to that page, and what is it?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I'll keep it brief, but look, just really to what Chelsea said there, we had kind of a couple of thousand lines of data to kind of pull into themes, and which is fine, once you get into a rhythm with that's cool. But ultimately, it was a bit kind of grouping it together to go, well, what are we hearing? What are the themes here? And then again, what Chelsea said, and that's a really important part, was a calibration of that data, not only to what you knew, your existing data sets, but the reality of it. The EVP is a transaction, right? It's it's what your employees want. It's what your organization can actually give and wants to give, and it's part of the strategy. And then it's what your competitors don't do, and that's your kind of perfect Venn diagram there. But where it came out was, it's important to kind of calibrate that to go, well, what is, as Chelsea said, what is real and authentic and true? And aspirational can still be real and authentic and true as long as you're communicating it as aspirational. Yeah. And I think where what came out as a strength, I think, was the employee group's aspiration for their organisation. Bearing in mind that Bendigo and Adelaide Bank have an employee group that have a long tenure, particularly in regional areas, and still to hear that kind of aspiration for the organisation, the future, which is their Ben 22 plan, like any business, was actually highly inspiring. But what we're seeing here is kind of fundamentally in a group on a one page. This is what we heard in the data, and pulled into themes and pillars based on what we heard from a data set perspective. It's not the creative, but it's a foundation for that.
Yeah, right. And the next slide, Chelsea probably talks to how that was then translated into a playbook, and this is a page out of that playbook. Do you want to talk to that process for us?
Yeah, sure. So these are what many post-its and all of those data lines that Jason just mentioned boiled down to, and these were the key themes that came out of it. And I think when you look at all of that data, you go, okay, wow, how do we pull this together? But it actually becomes quite apparent quite quickly when you do it. And these were the 5 themes or pillars that our research came down to. So engaging with Businessary, we were able to create this playbook essentially, and it is just the start. When we say a playbook, it's basically the rules or the guidelines about that will inform the creation of our assets and what we do around our employer brand moving forward. So we could use this document and give it to, say, our internal marketing team when we're creating assets, and say, look, these are our guidelines, this is what we want to communicate and how we want to be expressing our EVP. we had somebody, whilst we outsourced the creation of this work, what we made sure to do was collaborate, particularly through our marketing division as well, because we didn't want to create a set of guidelines that were totally off-brand, that didn't feel like the look and feel of what our consumer brand would be. So we had a senior graphic designer and also a senior copywriter partner with us through this process, just to make sure that we were on track. So you'll see just little things. So those taglines that those pillars boil down to, which are sort of just quick grabs. An example is how we've connected those. Our Bendigo Bank branding is a double B, Bendigo Bank, BB. So we have threaded that double B convention, or those words, through those pillars, so it's got that nice consistency across a consumer brand and also an employer brand.
Perfect. And then, I know that that work also informed the work with Page Up recruitment marketing and bringing that career site to life. Perhaps you can just talk about that, and then we can ask Fiona to extend on that.
Yeah, so we were basically doing both pieces of work simultaneously, which I think is an important point. You can do that. You don't need to do two things, in separate processes. Page Up recruitment marketing suited us because it is an extent, we kept everything within the same ecosystem. We have the ATS, we've got the onboarding module, we've got our talent management module. So it made sense to have that module that sits up at the very front of that employee experience. We knew that with this product that we would have control over building both simultaneously, which suited our timeframes, really. So we knew that Page Up marketing could function well as a minimum viable product. We didn't need to finish all of our EVP work, for example, and then go and work with a web designer. We could keep both pieces simultaneously happening because we had full control over it. So we didn't have to go back and forward with a web designer over finicky little edits as they arose. And we knew with Page Up recruitment marketing, because we were starting a lot of our strategies, so those strategic initiatives from scratch, we knew that we would need data to inform the rest of those decisions, particularly around recruitment marketing and the CRM piece, and we knew that we could get that from recruitment marketing.
Yep. And did you find that having that playbook or the content and the research helped you to populate the career site?
Yes, yep. So when you are dealing with, and again, when you're trying to connect your internal marketing branding team to be, yes, it needs to be within brand guidelines for your organisation, but also this is where we want to head with our employer brand, you do need to meet somewhere in the middle. So having those having the guidelines allowed us to sort of have that source of truth to lean back on and say, no, is this within guidelines? We could share it, particularly even just little things around fonts and tones. We didn't have to invent that stuff from scratch. We just knew, yep, great, let's refer back to the playbook. Does that fit in with what we're saying? Do we want to talk to these pillars here? Where can we talk to that pillar on that page? So it did make it a lot easier.
Right. And Fiona, can you sort of give us a sneak peek into perhaps some of the data that you might be seeing coming through Page Up recruitment marketing, and any other insights that other clients might be seeing?
Yeah, sure, happy to. I mean, just building on Chelsea's point there, the way in which the Bendigo and Adelaide Bank team have approached it is very incremental, which is fantastic because they can get that consistent message out to their audience and build off that. So build incrementally and continue to do that. So as you see from the funnel here, they're really looking at targeting distinct messages and consistent messages at a volume to a larger audience, to then use marketing automation techniques to pull them through the funnel to apply. and really getting the right quality candidate conversion happening. So what you're seeing here is just some common statistics across our customer base. So using those marketing strategies to help promote quality engagement with individuals and then convert them, as I said, to apply. So on the left, you see we typically see an uplift around 6 times to apply to higher ratios through using the intelligent career site and the recommended automated workflows. We see on average around 30% savings on sourcing spend, because the tool not only allows you to measure the channel they applied, but the channel in which the candidate originally came from. A lot of people come visit your website, try and learn a bit about you and come back. So that second visit becomes really important in nurturing them, really promoting what you're about as an organization and bringing them into your business. The third area you see there on the bottom is around candidates that have applied through talent networks. So taking sort of your basic approach to attraction and then really building up talent pipelines, nurturing those pipelines in an automated fashion, and then promoting jobs and employment opportunities to them. That saves organizations heaps of cost in terms of sourcing and agency spend. So that's really critical on this journey as well, especially with hard to fill roles. And lastly, the metrics in the site allow you to measure who's dropping off, who's not completing applications, who's interacting with you. So you immediately can start nurturing that talent, and we're seeing around 20% of incomplete applications which happen that then go on to an apply or a hire experience. So it's, as Chelsea was saying, it's really, really great to benchmark those metrics, and then you can adjust your sourcing strategy accordingly. And until you get those benchmarks, it's harder to do, and you need to start somewhere.
Great. Fabulous. Thanks, Fiona. We're going to be asking questions for the whole panel at the end of the session, but Chelsea, Fiona, and Jason, if there was one thing that you could share with the audience as a key takeaway, or if they're still weighing up whether they should start working on their EVP, what's that one piece of gold, one piece of advice that you would give them what to do next? Jason, can we start with you?
For sure. Look, I'm obviously going to say this, but I say this from experience. Where you can, get some help with the legwork or get a plan together, or even an external voice to help you facilitate the conversations that you're going to have to. We talk a lot about building the business case for EVP, which I still find surprising. We have to justify it, but nonetheless, it's a fact. And actually, get somebody to come in with some experience to help facilitate a conversation, or at least get the legwork done for you, as usually you're doing this as part of your day job.
Yeah, great. Fiona, any one piece of advice?
I would obviously take technology lens here, but I would really keep it simple and take an incremental step on the journey. I think people believe they need to have everything, they need to reach their vision on day one. They don't. You can get immediate return on investment overnight, and it's really simple to get things up and get build a basic automation and promotion approach, and to that consistent way in which you want to reach your audience. So I would say, do it step by step, learn, build, and continue the journey that way.
Great, thanks, Fiona. And lastly, Chelsea, what's your one piece of advice?
One thing that I've spoken a little bit about the data, but particularly for organisations that might have quite large people functions, for example, absolutely check in with what other initiatives or programs of work could simultaneously be happening, because there can be the similar work happening with focus groups, for example. Are you overloading the business with scheduling too much? Is it the right time? Does that piece fit in with everything else happening within your organisation? But then also, is there messaging coming out from any part of the business? It could be something to do with your internal trademarks or even your values. Make sure that they connect to the EVP themes that you're seeing, because you don't want to get to the end of the process communicating a conflicting message with other teams or divisions that are also trying to influence change at the same time.
Right. All fabulous points. Totally would agree. Thank you, team. Thank you, panel, for sharing those insights on that Bendigo and Adelaide Bank journey from zero to an EVP. We're going to take a 5-minute break, give you a chance to grab a tea or coffee, ask someone if they're okay, of course. For those of us down in Victoria, check on homeschooling. And when we will return, we'll be joined by the team from Flybys. And a reminder, please keep your questions coming through for our Q&A session towards the end. Thank you, and we'll be back at 10:05.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Icon. Welcome back, everyone. Just waiting for all our panelists to come back online. Okay, hope everyone enjoyed that break. We're going to get straight back into what's a really exciting story, which is the Flybuys story. So firstly, introducing our panel, Rosemary Martin is the Flybuys Chief Customer Experience Officer and is responsible for leading best practice customer experience across Flybuys and leading the customer experience and insights, marketing and consumer product teams. Rosemary's worked in senior customer marketing roles at Coles and at ANZ. Eden Haddock is the Senior Manager of Talent and Development at Flybuys and has been instrumental in leading the transformation of talent acquisition. Just over 12 months, Eden's implemented a new ATS talent community, onboarding and assessment technology, as well as redesigning the EVP employer brand and value strategies. And prior to Flybuys, Eden led talent acquisition at AIA Insurance. So welcome both of you. Rosemary, Eden, like Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, Flybuys has been on quite a journey. Can you tell us a little about this and what it's meant to be a member and to your approach to talent?
For sure. Look, I might give a bit of an overview firstly before I hand over to Ro to talk about what it's meant from a member perspective, and then I can talk through talent. But the interesting thing with Flybuys, we actually celebrated our 26th birthday just last week. And when I say our 26th birthday, that's Flybuys as a program rather than Flybuys as an organisation. What's been really unique for us, we were historically owned by Coles, and when Coles emerged from Wesfarmers, we were set up by Coles and Wesfarmers as a joint venture. So we're in our second year of building out a brand new business. So 26 years of history in terms of the Flybuys program. It is very unusual and very unique that we've had to build out a brand new business and go into startup mode. We're in the second year of that. So really for us, that first year was establishing ourselves as an organisation. It was building out our teams. We've grown from what was originally at the start of the JV 70 employees. We've now grown to 200 employees. So hence why I've gone grey. It's been a very, very busy period as we really have set Flybuys up operationally. We've had to build out all of our shared services teams. And the other complicated scenario that we faced is that all of our technology was hosted by Coles. And Coles are an on-prem environment as well. So we've had to shift all of our operational and all of our member and partner technology into our own environment. And we've been quite ambitious around that. And we've moved into the cloud. That we've also, thinking of what we actually do as an organisation, we really are an analytics and marketing business that provides that service to our partners and provides and we provide that reward to our members. So we've had to actually migrate all of our data into our own environment as well, and that's been quite a significant project that's coming to completion now. So in terms of us as an organisation, we're now in that really exciting phase of innovation. We've built out our teams. We have our own CEO. We have our leadership team, our own board. We now have a team of 200. And now we're in that exciting time where we're really looking at Flybuys as a product and how we really innovate and take Flybuys to the next level and help it reach the potential that we always knew it had. So on that note, I'll hand over to Ro to talk about what that has meant, I guess, and what it will mean for our members.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eden. So I guess as Eden noted, as a business, we've undergone a significant amount of change in the last couple of years. And through the process of establishing ourselves independently and replatforming, on top of that, we've obviously been thinking about, as a business, does our purpose still stand? What are our values? And then I guess laddered up to that as well is just thinking through, what is our strategy? What does our 5-year plan look like? And through that process, from a member perspective, we've really spent the last year seeking to understand our members a lot more. So as Eden said, you know, we have a 26-year relationship with members. We cover 2/3 of Australian households. There is a lot of data there, but what was probably missing was a lot more of that richer insight as well. So we really sought to, as we've been building out our business strategy, I guess, better understand what is it that our members are seeking in relation to our program, and what are their key kind of needs and pain points. And that's really informed, you know, the strategy, as well as I guess our 12 to 18 month product roadmap as well. So through this process, we now have I guess a product structure, and we're looking at all of the products and features and innovation that we're going to be bringing to market for our members. And so the last year's been really spent on formulating a lot of that. So Eden, maybe do you want to talk about the talent side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think being within an organisation that's going through significant change and significant innovation, and for us, with my manager, Fiona Lund, who I'm really fortunate to work with, she's incredibly creative as well. So we're like a dream partnership. We really established early on that a traditional talent approach wasn't going to work for Flybuys. What we, you know, as you can imagine, we've come from being a very large corporate in what is predominantly a retail industry to shifting into what's really a platform business and a tech startup more than anything, and very much a rich marketing, business and analytics community. So we really needed to look at how are we going to attract the right talent in, and how are we going to develop our talent. Usually when you look at a talent function, it tends to fall into that talent acquisition only recruitment function. And we've really tried to throw that all out the window and look at what would work for us as an organisation, try and forget everything that we've done in the past and try and establish something that is different and is unique, and that actually works for our organisation. And I think that's why it's been really successful for us. You know, myself and Yash Dunford, who's an absolute gun in my team, I mean, we don't receive a job description from a leader and go to market and try and recruit. You know, we're involved in the entire employee life cycle, and that starts at creating and co-creating what that position will look like, and providing really rich market insights in terms of what's happening out there in the talent community. You know, is it seasonal? Is this role going to attract people? How do we develop this role to ensure that people are going to be excited by not only this role, but the development that comes with that role, making sure that the recommendations that we place in terms of grading and REM are 100% in line and attractive to people, so we're bringing in the right people. So it's, you know, and then right through, we also look after learning and development and people development as well. So it's looking at that, I guess, internal mobility and career development for our people as well, and starting right there when we design the role. So it's a very, very different approach to talent acquisition. It really is a talent management team that we look after, and that's working really well for us. And we're in that exciting phase of continuing to evolve that with the learning program particularly, and our recognition program that we will be launching very soon.
Nice. And obviously, you know, I believe the EVP program, you know, it's transformed in the last 18 months, but you're actually going through a review process again at the moment. You know, what's driving that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as I said, we started with 70 staff and built to 200. And, you know, as myself and Ro were just talking through, you know, the significant change and growth that we've been through, not only as an organisation, but what that has meant for our members and partners as well, and moving into that real phase of innovation. When we launched Find Your Place at Flybuys, it was very, very fitting for the environment that we were in, because in a way, we're really finding our feet. You know, we were setting ourselves up as a new organisation. discovering what our ways of working would be, finding the right approach, and as Rose said, establishing our roadmaps, our product roadmaps, our strategy, defining our purpose and our values. So finding your place really fit for us. And I think another reason we really wanted to do a review on this and to dive deep into it is the nature of work has changed. And, although we were moving into a high flex environment, it's been thrust upon us because of COVID. So those key drivers for people and what we were going to market in terms of our EVP and employer brand has shifted dramatically. When we look at our careers pages, when we look at our marketing materials behind talent, there's a lot of office, there's a lot of people collaborating, which is really great, but they're collaborating in an office space. There's no technology, there's no Microsoft Teams, it just doesn't feel like what is now the new norm. And I'm one of those people that doesn't believe that we will return to that environment. I mean, we have an office that we'll be moving back into, but it's predominantly a collaboration space. It's not a traditional office anymore. So we need to be on the front foot of that. What's going to be important to people moving forward in this current environment? I mean, we've hired 50 people during COVID that none of us had ever met face to face, and that's going to continue as well. And I think the key to the success of that is that we have a 100% digital talent platform, right from, recruitment, interviewing, onboarding, everything's 100% digital. So that's working for us. So how do we make sure that works in the new norm, or is this the new norm, I suppose, is the question that we're facing. So we've got to really delve into doing a review, and we are quite deep into doing a review on our EVP and our employer brand to support that.
The other thing I would just say to add to that too, Eden, is also, I alluded to the fact that we'd spent a lot of time researching our members in the past year, and as part of that as well, we've really reconsidered our brand position in the market, and that's kick-started a journey where we will be doing a significant brand repositioning for our businesses. I guess as a part of that too, when you think about the shaping of the EVP and how you're going to be bringing that to market and communicating it, it just wouldn't make sense to do it if it was going to be out of step with where our brand was going to be positioned for consumers moving forward as well. So it's been really important for Eden and I that we've kind of been going on that journey together as well, in that sort of sense too, so that everything that Eden is working on and is going to be bringing to market is kind of aligned to where our brand is going to be sitting in the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, it's a really great example that Rose highlighted, and where I feel, that I'm incredibly fortunate. I mean, I have a lot of support from Ro and Ro's senior brand manager, Jared, and her senior customer insights manager, Sarah. So as we've been going through that review, we really are tackling it the same way that Ro's team are tackling our master brand, I suppose, or Flybys from a consumer brand perspective. I attended some of the focus groups for our customers where, I was sitting behind a glass screen and seeing all that customer research that Rose team look after that is absolutely phenomenal. And we're doing exactly the same in terms of, how we redefine our EVP and our employer brand. We've followed exactly the same process under Sarah Goddard, who's amazing, and we've run focus groups with both internal and external audiences to help define what that will look like moving forward, and to find out what those key drivers are, and to test the market in terms of what we're looking to roll out. It's been quite phenomenal that we're following that path.
Nice. And Rosemary, there's probably some in the audience that are slightly envious of that partnership that you and Eden and marketing and talent have. Why has that particularly been important to you? And I guess, which you've sort of alluded to, and I guess, why would you encourage other CMOs to invest in that relationship?
Yeah, sure. I'd say there's probably two key things that I think about when I think about why this partnership's important. And one is just, I guess, from a brand and experience perspective. So the way I look at it, all potential employees and current team members are our customers or future customers. And I think it's, an important but often overlooked group from a marketing perspective. Yet if you get that right, they can become some of our biggest advocates. So you know, it's really important to ensure that every touch point that any customer group has with our brand is the right one and is consistent. And then I think probably the second thing too is just on if you getting involved in the EVP, I guess my view is if you get that right and you're attracting you know, the top talent who genuinely buy into your business purpose and values, that is 100% going to drive the right customer outcomes and success for us as a business too. So it's probably though, you know, like I just really buy into having that strong partnership for those two reasons.
Makes sense to me. And I guess, Eden, you know, why was the collaboration important to you and what's in it for your candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I completely echo Ro's sentiments there. I think the partnership is so important between my team and Ro. Like if you think about it, I mean, everyone's talking about candidate experience at the moment. It's been, look, I'd argue it's probably been the conversation that talent teams have been having for the last 5 years, in honesty, and no one's quite cracking it. But I think ultimately we want to crack it. It's just very hard to get investment in most organisations and most talent teams to be able to get it to the degree that you want it to be, because as we know, all talent acquisition people are incredibly busy. They're filtering through hundreds and hundreds of CVs. I was looking at a chart that someone had put out that showed a day in the life of a recruiter, and it was this massive big spider web of all the activities that we do. So we're incredibly busy. But if you're partnering with your customer team or your marketing team, and you know, you have that buy-in from them, it's very easy to get that investment. I mean, Ro's absolutely right. We've got, you know, 8.6 million engaged members. So, you know, if you just, you know, make a pretty naive crunch of the numbers there, at least a quarter of the people that I'm talking to day to day or that are going through a recruitment process already are a Flybuys member, or they're potentially a new member. So, you know, just putting that really simply, to have that partnership and understanding from your, you know, chief marketing officer or chief customer experience officer that the people that you're interacting with are members or potential members, you will get the investment in technology, and you'll get the investment in resources and the investment in marketing to really be able to move forward with best practice. So for me, it's an absolute dream partnership, and yeah, I couldn't fault it. You're amazing, Ro. Lot of love in the room.
Eden, you maybe talked to, we've got up on the screen the points for candidate, which is quite unique and pretty exciting program. Do you want to expand on that and just tell the audience a little about that?
Yeah, look, this program is about 6 months in, getting very close to 6 months in. It has so much potential, but it's really going back to, as I said, at least a quarter of the people that are going through a recruitment process are already an existing Flybuys member, or they're interested in working for Flybuys, which means that they're interested in the Flybuys program. So we're all about, you know, our purpose is really to make those everyday activities simple, safe and rewarding. So if you're buying your groceries and scanning your app or scanning your card, or you're filling up your car with petrol and you're scanning your app, scanning your card, paying your electricity bill, or, you know, health insurance, whatever it might be, it's those everyday activities that we're rewarding people for. Now, one of the things we historically haven't done well as an industry in talent acquisition is we haven't really, and this is going back to candidate experience as well, and that buzzword, we haven't really appreciated talent going through our recruitment processes, or we haven't really thanked people. You still see these ads saying only successful people will be contacted, and, you know, just these terrible practices that you wouldn't actually see in day-to-day life when you're going to the grocery store, or when you're, you know, paying a bill or what have you. You know, we're very, very backward in that case. And I think Points for Candidates is really celebrating that people are connecting with our brands, not only our employer brands, but our customer brands, because they want to work for us, and we're rewarding them. So it's another one of those everyday activities that we already reward our members for, that we're rewarding our, as I said, more than likely members that are going through the process, or from a commercial perspective, we're really triggering further engagement in the program. And what this does for candidates as well, this gives them a hands-on experience of what it's like to be a Flybuys customer. And to Rose's point, if we have people that are focused on, you know, I guess lifting our customer experience or passionate about our customer experience or member experience, this is giving them a hands-on very, very early on in their journey with us as an employee. They're activating points, they've got the ability to redeem points, they understand what that process feels like and looks like. And it's really taking a candidate experience and shifting it into a member experience to ensure that that synergy is there. So it's been really great. I mean, the amount of feedback that I'm receiving quite early on, you know, they're like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that before. That's amazing. And thank you so much for caring so much. And it's particularly important for people that are unsuccessful that you still want to maintain a relationship with, not only as potential talent pool, but also as I said, as a member or a customer. You know, you don't want them to go through a recruitment process and then for them to have a really bad impression of Flybuys because they were unsuccessful. You know, we're saying thank you for connecting with us, and we'd love to continue connecting with you as a member and also as a future employee. So it's been great. And I think, you know, we're as I said, we're early on, but once we start seeing some of the rich data coming out of that and seeing what the engagement has been in this program, it's going to really help us drive what our future strategy will be.
Fabulous. And Rosemary, anything to add to that from a customer experience perspective?
No, I guess the only other thing I'd say is that, as Eden said, it's a great way to get people to actually trial the program in a sense too. So what we often see is people join our team and they might be Flybuys members, but they don't necessarily know that much about the program or be that engaged. And honestly, give it a couple of months and these people are suddenly advocates of Flybuys. You know, like we love talking points and all of that. So I'd say the more that we can get people to kind of trial the program, test it out, as Eden said, it's a really nice way just to join together the CVP and the EVP. And I guess from my perspective, I'm going to be really interested to see the data once, you know, we've got the maturity and stuff to get some data points out of it. But equally, you know, I love it when people are like, oh, I went on the reward store to redeem those 5,000 points, and why are you doing this? That's not really great. Or, you know, I can actually get some direct feedback from it as well to further improve the program. So it's got that added benefit as well.
Perfect. Nice. So thank you both. Before we move on to our Q&A session, can you both think about what would be that one piece of advice that you would give the audience on how to get started in their own organisation? Eden?
Yeah, sure. So sorry.
No, you can go, right?
I'd say I've got an answer ready to go already. So I think from my perspective, my advice to people in Eden's position on the talent side would be to come to your CMO or your marketing team and absolutely sell the bigger picture as to, you know, why this is important. But remember as well that you can start small and get some quick wins and then build the trust and credibility and go from there. So you don't need to kind of invest really large financial resources. From a marketing perspective, maybe it's going to be my team's time or the agency's time. And so you can kind of build that partnership in terms of, you know, with EVP development, for example, Eden might fund some of the hard costs associated with the research, and I'm providing the people to actually conduct the research and just prioritising resources that way. So kind of if you're each putting a bit in, it's a much easier kind of approach rather than an all-in ask.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, look, my one piece of advice, because I do get asked this question quite a lot in terms of how we've been able to get buy-in from not only Ro and our customer experience team, but really from our CEO and our leadership team as well, in terms of the investment that they've made in talent. It's really it's all about mindset, really. I think, you know, you need to kind of forget about the legacy in terms of recruitment processes and talent acquisition, and really really partner with the business and be curious. We have a really great opportunity in talent acquisition to be able to embed ourselves in the business. I mean, I'm nearly 2 years in with Flybys, and I still attend every single interview because I want to know what's going on across the business, and I've got that avenue to do it. I don't need to knock on the door of the leadership team or any of our leaders across the business to try and find out what's going on. I mean, we're a very transparent organisation anyway, but I've got that really great opportunity to build those relationships, understand what's going on, understand what their key challenges are, and help inform and help find solutions. I mean, it's a pretty simple way to get in there. So I think my piece of advice is to embed yourself in the organisation, understand what's going on from a strategic level, understand what every leader has on their roadmap, and help inform that and show that you actually care and that you're passionate about it. And then everything falls into place. You'll have the buy-in because they know you're there to support them. And that's always and it always has been, in fact, in any team that I've looked after or any recruiter that's reached out to me is get in there because you've got that opportunity at interview to build credibility. And, for a lot of people that can be, and particularly in larger organisations, a difficult door to open, but we've got that wide open. So just jump in there and build those partnerships.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to move into the live Q&A session, and we've got some questions that were submitted in advance, and we've also got some questions that have come through during the presentation. So I'm going to jump into one of those right off the bat from Dario Polini from APM. They've asked, interesting point about how Flybys doesn't go to market with a job description, rather that you're involved in the entire process of creating the role and marketing it. And you mentioned that you use market insights to shape those conversations. Can you share a little bit more about where you derive your market or candidate insights from?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's several data sources. I mean, we use Mercer IPE in order to grade positions, and a lot of organisations do as well. But the difference is that's usually managed out of a rewards team or managed out of a business partnering unit. We also know the market. I mean, we're recruiters and we know just by talking to candidates what's happening or talking to our networks in the market. So it's definitely a combination in terms of informing what the best position will look like. So what we will do is we'll work with the leader almost with a blank canvas to really nut out what this position would look like and what those key drivers will be or what will be important to people. And we're seasoned professionals in talent acquisition. We know those markets. That's what we specialize in. But unfortunately, I think historically job design has sat within the wrong business unit, and that's my personal opinion. And this is working really well for us to be able to ask the right questions as you're designing a role. You haven't got a leader filling in a template and sending a template to a reward team to evaluate, and then that template is then returned to a recruitment team to try and work out what this role actually is and how it fits in. If you're involved right from the start, you're going to have a much more attractive proposition when you're trying to attract talent in, because you're helping inform it and you're understanding the market. So that's really why we've gone down that path, and that's working phenomenal for us. It really has been a game changer, I must say, in terms of being able to attract the right people.
Perfect. Thanks, Eden. Penny has asked, how do you, to Chelsea, Fiona and Jason, how do you get your focus group information into something that resembles an EVP?
Do you want to go, Chelsea?
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about it. I would say a bit of a tip through that focus group process was we did conduct those focus groups face to face. Obviously, that might not be the right solution now, but I think as opposed to a static survey, for example, it is really important to dig for that quality information. And if and have that discussion. So we actually facilitated that focus group as almost a really large discussion over a couple of hours. We had specific points, but if you do have a comment from a particular person about something, it's really digging below. Okay, what do you really mean by that? Where is that coming from? Is that just your gut feel? For example, oh, communication isn't, don't feel like communication is great within the organisation. Okay, why do you feel that? Oh, because we're changing all the time. Okay, why do you feel we're changing all the time? Oh, we're going on a transformation right now. And then, oh, okay, yep, okay, maybe that's just symptomatic of the environment we're in, not actually about a kink or a friction point through the organisation. So that would be, I think, one tip. And then the statement, I mean, using the post-it note theory and getting all that data and then trying to group it together is stage 2. And then using, as we showed, the hierarchy. Feedback. Can you hear me now?
Jason, you right, Chelsea? Otherwise, we might get Jason.
We're all good. Sorry, I just had some feedback. Using the hierarchy process to be able to summarize on a page what you are seeing, and being able to succinctly calibrate that back by talking to other people is going to be the next stage through that.
Fabulous. And I guess Chelsea, Jason, while I've got you, Leanne has asked, how did you decide what to outsource and what to keep in-house?
Yeah, this is a really important one. So I think this is going to vary, of course, across organisations, but you need to first look at the resource that you have available and also the capability. Is the resource and the capability there? You need to be having those discussions around how that fits into those other initiatives and programs of work. For example, of course, we have an internal marketing team. They have a million other things also on simultaneously. They could have done it, but you need to line that up with your timeframes and also the areas of expertise. Have they done similar work before? Is it within their skill set? And finding the balance between it, because there is a lot of heavy lifting and you need to make the decision as an organisation if that heavy lifting can be done outside so they can be doing more valuable work elsewhere. If you do find that, yes, we do have the resource and we do have the talent to be able to do it, book it in early. It's a million other things that they also have on. You need to be able to obviously give them the heads up and almost book your spot that and make sure that you're going to have the resource available. As we know, internal teams can be pulled from initiative to initiative. They're managing multiple stakeholders. So that is going to be a challenge as well when you keep it in-house as opposed to outsourcing. You have that attention, I guess, and you have those agreed timeframes with whoever you outsource with.
Yep, great. Thanks, Chelsea. Question, Fiona, for you. Tim has asked, how do you know if you have enough content marketing to get started with the tech?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach, but I think Chelsea touched on it a bit today as well. You've got to look at what you already have as, don't ignore what you already have, and broadly between your internal corporate network, your recruitment team, you'd be surprised what material already exists. So start with sort of repurposing that and getting those messages out there, and then build on that. So again, you can pretty much get the tech enabled for you or promote those messages pretty easily with what you have today and build on that.
Great. And Sue Chamberlain-Ward from an exec manager, P&C in early childhood education, has asked, and I think this is for you, Eden, what does a 100% digital talent platform look like?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really great question. Prior to COVID, I never thought that I'd be comfortable in interviewing in a digital environment. I always thought that was the one component of our candidate experience that I thought would always be face-to-face. I never thought we'd break down that hurdle. But really for us, our technology all the way through. So we have quite a few. So we've got quite a few open API technology providers. So we flow through Live Hire, we have Weirdly, we have HR Onboard that then feeds into our core HRIS. Now, for us, when I say 100% digital, and particularly now that we're not doing face-to-face interviews, if someone applies for a role, they will literally click through and go through the entire process right through to their onboarding, and even at the moment their equipment's being delivered to their house. So when I say 100% digital, it means that there's no face-to-face interaction. We are still having conversations, but we're using technology to have those conversations. We're having conversations via digital means, not via face-to-face. We do a lot of communications that I had historically. Another thing that I never thought I'd break down if I'm looking back to previous roles, we use two-way SMS technology in terms of booking in, around interview, feedback back and forward, advice, sharing position descriptions, all of that sort of stuff. We're using that technology, which is really great, and that's something that's hosted by Live Hire and works really well for us. If you then have a look at that 100% digital process for talent, it really mirrors what our customer process is. Flybuys, we don't interact face-to-face with our Flybuys members. We provide, whether it be campaigns through the app or through the web or through email channels, like everything is digital, so it just 100% makes sense. So I can't actually see myself returning to face-to-face interviews, so it'll be interesting to have that conversation with our leaders in the future as to, they seem to be enjoying it, and we haven't had any, and look, candidates love it. It's very, very easy to facilitate as well. So like I was saying earlier, I think this is, COVID's forced us into what will be our new norm, and it's really working. So we've got to see the positive.
Perfect.
The only downside I would say is that I did interview a candidate and had a nude 2-year-old run on camera.
But you know what? I love that. That's seeing, it's all about finding, someone that they're authentic. So, 2-year-old in the background. I've always got cats in the background. I quite like that. You're getting to know the person. So, maybe nudity is going a little bit too far, but why not?
There is a lot to be said to the transparency that COVID has provided us. Jason?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to put that question to Fiona. What are you seeing across the kind of the page up arena and the tech arena generally around the shift towards this kind of whole digital? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think that the same thing's really happening with everybody getting more comfortable with doing everything online, where there may have been perceived barriers to achieving that. And, we can't do that because, the process means we have to be face to face. So it really pushes you to make that change much more rapidly. And those perceived barriers do get removed. And we also see more technology going into things like screening and communications and a lot more around how to automate life for recruiters. Because I think it was Eden who mentioned earlier on, they're always so busy. There's hardly any time to breathe. So that's where technology really needs to play a role in automating that for you, so you can get on with the high value activities as a recruiter.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So we had a question from Poppy Hurley, who's from the ABN group. She's asked, we're a business that's made up of 22 companies, including 4 main large residential building companies. Any hints or tips from anyone on how to align our recruitment processes across the group, but keep the uniqueness of our individual residential building company brands that our customers love? There's a curly one. Who wants to put their hand up first?
It's probably an obvious one for Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah, that is a really hard one. Hi, Poppy. I think it would almost be coming down to seeing what the appetite is for the business and where their customer, what's the hero brand, or what are the hero brands, and what a customer or what an employee is who doesn't work within the organisation, who might not be a customer. what is the most recognizable out there, and then being able to fit for the majority rather than the minorities. I think you need to start somewhere, and you can start segmenting off as you go further down the recruitment funnel by having those individual conversations. But in terms of an actual, and there's a lot within a recruitment process, I'm not sure if you're particularly talking about employer brand and attraction, or actually through individual the interviewing through a recruitment process. But I think, yeah, my advice would be to start with the hero brands, or what the appetite could be to position the majority.
I might just jump in as well on the back of Chelsea's point. Yes, sorry, Jason. I think the technology can also help with that as well. So if you have distinct communities or distinct websites or microsites you need to create, it is possible. Technology can do that. It can not only make the message consistent, but and get that flavor throughout all those brands that you have in your circumstance, but it also can deal with that scenario where you've got multiple brands. And again, you don't need to add headcount to that. You can use technology to support those messages more broadly.
Just quickly, I think what you'll potentially find as you go through the diagnostic, and it depends where you're at with this journey, and doing the research for EVP and employer brand, what you're really trying to communicate is employee experience. And what you'll probably find is that employee experience is generally pretty much the same, unless you're doing something very different. I think what we found with Bendigo Bank was certainly the employee experience was somewhat different if you're customer facing, but within that group. But whether you were in agri, or whether you were in the retail bank or business bank, and your customer facing, the experience is largely the themes there. And it's the same if you're in a more corporate role. And I think that's why you need to do that piece of work and not get so tied up about the brand or the logo, because the employee experience is largely going to be pretty much the same with some variations. And I think we get quite tied up, and rightly so, and having to make something quite different for the brand, but you're not really communicating the essence of a brand, you're communicating the employee experience. And so they're different things, and you'll find that when you do the legwork, and then you take that back, and that's the type of conversation you would want to have with Ro or your CMO or your leadership team to actually get this piece of work on their agenda, I think, because you're starting to kind of talk the language somewhat with still having a talent lens.
Thanks, Jason. We've got a question from Renato online. He's asked, how do you measure the success of the program, and are there any financial advantages that you can take out of the initiatives? I know a lot of conversations around getting started, building a business case is always a challenge. So for all of you, any examples or financial advantages you can talk to?
Oh, I'll kick off with just a pretty obvious one, I suppose. I mean, if you're investing in the right technology, and you're investing in the right candidate experience, and you're investing in marketing, it's going to be a lot easier to attract the right people. And as long as it's authentic, that experience is authentic, and the technology fits. Where I'm almost 2 years in with Flybuys. We had historically, we'd had agency spend, where our agency spend is zero. So we haven't had to outsource any of our recruitment whatsoever. And that's really down to the investment that we've had in technology, the investment that we've had in marketing, and the fact that we're not just keeping it and letting it plateau. We're continuing to evolve, and we're continuing to invest. We're continuing to look at different solutions, different ideas, different innovations, different technologies, and adding that into our tech stack. As I said, we're reviewing what our employer brand looks like for this new world, for what our organisation has evolved into. So I probably run one of the leanest talent acquisition functions, for an organisation of our size, because we've had that amazing partnership with the likes of Ro and with the likes of our leadership team and our CEO and Fiona, my manager. Like, if you can get it right and have that early investment, it's very easy to be able to shift it. And I think that's a really obvious one, is cost savings when you get it right.
Right.
And building on Eden's point as well, the time to actually attract that talent and get it into your business. Not only can you measure your sourcing approach and how you can start incrementally improving on those costs, but the time it takes to fill that seat. And in a lot of organizations, that has an obvious productivity hit straight away. So both those 2 points together play well into the business case.
And I think as much as there is a lot of commentary at the moment around it being a candidate-rich market, I actually think it's the opposite. I think the war for talent has never been greater. The war for the right talent to suit your business has never been greater. And now is the time to really have that succinct messaging and be really, really clear on what you're going to be offering through your experience as well, because you don't have the regular physical markers or cultural markers that you maybe once did. For example, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about ping pong tables and free lunches, and really that world is behind us now, and it's okay. People really want to know authentically, but beyond anything physical or the perks, who you stand for and what you do and what you don't stand for as well. And I think the sooner you can be really clear on that and start communicating that message, you will have people who naturally select out of the process, absolutely, but it's almost what you want to be happening right now. So there's a really strong case, I think, to embark on this type of work.
Yeah.
I just think one point for me, I think looking at stats that Fiona shared for Page Up Recruitment Marketing, I can't remember, but I think it's maybe a 30% saving on advertising costs. I would be encouraging any talent acquisition leader to be not necessarily talking about reducing costs at the moment, which there will be a burden on that because you often never get those back, but how will you reinvest that 30% saving on CCADs that, let's arguably, in my view, don't work very hard for you, and reinvest that into something like a re-platform, or you're going a bit further on your tech, or bringing in a new assessment tool, and that commercial thinking lens and partnering with finance around those type of questions to get your business case has never been more important, because I think we all go through periods like this when you'll cut costs, you will never get that cost back. We know that. Spend your budget, folks, and reinvest.
Yeah, fabulous. Probably the last question that we've got time for. Graham's asked, I'm quite interested in the difference between an internal EVP and external, or the go-to-market EVP, and how they're both positioned. Perhaps Rosemary, is that something that you and Eden can talk to, and then Chelsea?
Yeah, I think Eden, do you maybe want to cover that from our side?
Yeah, of course. Look, for us, it's really interesting. It is one of the things we're looking really deep into at the moment. So when we went to market with Find Your Place, it was really appropriate for both an internal and an external audience. But what we really are finding now in the work that we're doing and the research that we have done is that we will have our internal EVP, and what our external employer branding will be more of a call to action that is really sitting above what that EVP is. So, what are we wanting them to do? Are we wanting them to reach out to us? Are we wanting them to apply for a job? Without kind of letting loose what we're actually thinking, because we haven't quite landed on it, but we do have a concept around that, where we have, what does it mean to work with Flybys? And for an external brand, how are we getting them to connect to that? How are we calling them in to be able to connect to what that internal EVP looks like? So that's really where the difference is. I think you look at internally, it's what you stand for. It's all those. So when we did the research, Chelsea's absolutely spot on. The external research that we did, everyone was talking about values and purpose, and people weren't talking about perks. So what does that look like for your organisation? What is that narrative? What does it mean for your people? And then an external employer brand that links to that is saying, okay, well, call to action, come and join us. This is what we stand for. You're reaching out and you're trying to attract them in. So internal is what you're all about. External is pulling them in.
Perfect. Chelsea, I don't know if there's anything to add to that.
Yeah, I could probably give you an actual working example of that. So one of our pillars or our themes really spoke to technology, and more so aspirational in terms of the journey that we're currently on. So there's, from an external messaging, we found that, yes, we're on this journey. Technology is going to be a really big part of where we're going. We are not up there with the big four in terms of technology. We know that. We own that. We don't want external candidates coming to us or starting with us as employees thinking that we are whiz-bang technology. You're going to have this great experience, join the best of the best. By calling it out as one of our pillars and saying that we are building it and we are transforming, we're saying to that external market, hey, if you want to be a part of building something and contributing, and again, that purpose, if you want to actually contribute to the growth of something, this is going to be the right role for you. Internally, also what we're doing in that is we're calling it out to our internal staff by saying, yes, we acknowledge that we are not on the forefront. However, these are the cool things that we're still doing to be able to support that, and also shifting that narrative a bit to get people excited about that change and to be on that journey with us. I think there's a way that you can use your EVP messaging to be authentic, but also acknowledge the challenges or the opportunities that you're facing as an organisation as well.
I think just on that, your EVP or your employer brand messaging is as much about telling talent that are thinking about joining about what you're not as about what you are. Because if people know what you're not, they'll opt out, or if people know what you are, they will, and they get that when they arrive, then they'll retain. It's as simple as that. There's two things here. So I've worked in very polished organizations that the reality was actually quite different internally, and I've worked in organizations that were by far from polished, and we polished it up, or we gave the reality around it. So as I say, it's about as much about saying what you're not as about what you are in your messaging, both for internal and external.
Right. We're almost at a close, but I thought a nice way to finish off might be if we just one last time hear from each of the panel members. Is there any final thoughts that you want to share and wrap up with? So Fiona, can we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think from a technology lens, as I was saying before, it's really about how do I get on the journey, and don't be worried about or don't be scared that you haven't got all the answers on day one. And certainly we partner with organisations like Bendigo and Adelaide Bank to start on that iterative journey as if you were and building from there, and that's really our advice. And we can go on that journey and get those outcomes that organisations are looking for in terms of promoting their employer brand to the right audience.
Great, thanks Fiona. Rosemary.
Yeah, sure. I'd just say maybe from a marketing and CX perspective is just not to sort of underestimate the importance of making sure that you're linking and aligning your CVP and EVP. So yes, there's sort of different articulations of what you can offer a particular customer set, but it's so important that they're linked together by your brand and an approach to a really consistent experience.
Great. And Eden?
Yeah, look, 100%. But I think, for my advice to anyone leading a talent team or anyone within a talent team, to get this right, you need to really, I talked about mindset earlier, but you've really got to forget the legacy. You've got to forget the historical processes. You've got to design, you've got to test, you've got to learn, you've got to iterate, you've got to just really work out what works for you. And that's everything from marketing to technology, to Fiona's point, to, your ways of working. We've got to let go of this legacy because talent acquisition and recruitment, we don't have it right. We haven't had it right, and we all know that. So now's the time, as we've moved into this new world of working, to really start defining what that will look like and start experimenting and try and throw all the legacy out. That would be my advice.
Great advice. Chelsea.
And I've mentioned it a couple of times, but just in regards to consulting with other parts of your organisation and other teams who could have narratives that tie over into the employer brand or EVP messages, absolutely important to consult with them to make sure that you are all on the same page as you go through it, but also in saying that to not let your agenda be taken over enough that the message around your EVP is being diluted. So staying true to, yes, this is what we're trying to achieve through the process. Things like having your guidelines in place, so you know that you're going to achieve things at the end, rather than at times it can be quite bureaucratic with people with agendas through an organisation. So be clear on your goal at the start.
Yep, great advice. Jason, final piece of advice.
We're coming to the third month of Q1 for many of us. Don't have this on your agenda this time next year, which you might have. Use the time, if you're quieter and you're not hiring, to get ready for when you will. And look at the money you're spending. Look at the assets and the things you spend your money on that give you really little value or return or don't work hard enough for you. And there'll be many things like that, and reinvest it.
Great advice. So thank you. Thank you to the panel. Greatly appreciate your time and sharing really honest insights. Much appreciated. Thank you to our audience. As I mentioned at the start, we will be sending a survey to everyone. We really would appreciate the feedback, and we'll be drawing a voucher next Thursday for Providore or Uber Eats. So if that's a little incentive, please, it'll be a 5-minute survey. Please just fill that out for us. That'd be great. We are recording today's session, so that'll be available on our website. And of course, if you've got any other queries or questions, you can go to the Businessary website or call us on the phone number on the screen. Thank you everyone for attending. Have a great day, and thanks again. Goodbye.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.